Hello everyone, welcome back to my zoology class. Last class we talked about different type of diseases caused by pathogens. So this class also we are going to continue with the diseases caused by pathogens. Basically we are going to study about ringworms, then we are going to study about ascariasis, then filariasis, then instead of immunity, I'm going to first focus on AIDS and then cancer. After that only we'll move on to immunity, okay? So this is a very short one. We're going to talk a little bit about the ringworm. Why is it called a ringworm? Because it gives off a ring-like structure, okay? This ring-like structure is found in the skin of every living organism, in human, when they have this disease. What are the pathogens that causes ringworm? The pathogen comes under dermatophytes, basically of the genus. You know what are genus, right? Microsporum, Trichophyton and Epidermaphyton. What are genus? Basically you know that the kingdom classification is divided into PCOF GS. You should memorize this abbreviation, okay? PCOFGS, in which the first one is a phylum, second one is a class, order, family, genus and species. That means the genus for these pathogens are Microsporum, Trichophyton and Epidermaphyton. Remember that. So besides this, what is the symptoms of the ringworm? The most important symptom is that you will see a layer of dry scale-like, okay, it's like scale, a layer of skin which is very hard on the skin surfaces. It's like a bump layer, okay. This is usually seen in places which is very moist, like the foldings of your skin, where during the hot seasons it is kept very moist. There you will see the presence of the ringworm. So how do you transmit this ringworm? You can transmit this ringworm maybe through soil where this dermatophytes are present. But besides this, you can transmit it when you share infected towels, when you share combs, okay, when you share those objects and those clothes who is already infected with ringworm. So that's the reason why we come to the treatment, in which they say that you must maintain a proper personal hygiene, where you must take care of your health, where you must not share your clothes, share your towels, because this ringworm spreads through sharing of products and clothes. Remember that. Besides this, the treatment also includes getting this antifungal cream, like in case of surface and all. Like the most common example is the surface, where you put it in that area and then you keep that area dry instead of keeping it moist, okay. That's how you treat it. The next one is, now we're going to talk about important diseases. The most important one is ascariasis. Remember that. Ascariasis, you have always heard of the word called roundworm, right? You have heard of roundworm, you have heard of tapeworm. So roundworm comes under ascariasis, okay. So who is the pathogen? The pathogen is a worm called Ascaris lumbricoides, ASCARIS, Ascaris, lumbricoides, lumbricoides. Remember that. It is a roundworm which is found inside the human intestine, okay. Remember that. What are the symptoms? The most important symptoms is you always feel nauseous, you won't feel like eating food, you have stomach ache, and then you feel like your stomach is bloating, and then sometimes there will be diarrhea, sometimes you will start vomiting. Why will you have diarrhea? Sometimes you'll have constipation. Why? Because all your alimentary canals get affected, okay. So how does it affect? What is the life, or how does it move from an infected person to a normal person? That's what we're going to study. The first one is, we're going to talk about the infected person. Suppose the infected person gives out its feces out in the open, okay. Then this feces out in the open, it will be filled with eggs. Eggs of what? Eggs of the Ascaris lumbricoides, since it is already infected. When it gives out egg, In this case, let's say that the flies goes there, the feces, and then they go and settle on the foods. Besides that, that particular person does not wash his hands properly, and then he goes around touching different kind of foods, different kind of objects, and then another normal person touches it. So there will be the eggs that are transported. Okay, after they are transported by flies and contaminated hands, what will happen is that they will be swallowed along with contaminated food. They are contaminated. Why? Because they are filled with the eggs. Remember that. So when they are swallowed along with contaminated food by a normal human, what will happen is that the eggs will go inside along with the larva. Okay, they will start developing inside the eggs, the worm. After that, it will get swallowed and then go to the stomach, and then when it reaches the small intestine, what will happen is that the egg will burst out, okay, after releasing the small sized worm. This small sized worm is called the juvenile worm. Remember that. This juvenile worm will mature in the small intestine of a human being. As it matures, what will happen is that there will be some worms which will rupture the membrane of the intestine. Remember that. It will go beyond the intestine. When it goes beyond the intestine, what will happen is that they will first go and settle in the liver. Okay. After it settles in the liver, slowly they'll move to the heart. Remember that. After it goes to the heart, that worm, what will happen? This worm, what will happen is that the worm will go to the heart, then it will go to the lungs. After it goes to the lungs, it will go towards where? It will go towards the trachea. That is the respiratory pipe. After it goes to the trachea, it will go back again to the mouth area, where there is a connection between the the digestive system and the respiratory system. There is a connection. There is a connection. So from that connection, again, it will be swallowed back to the stomach. Okay, this is one of the cases where it creates a lot of problem for the individual, where it can rupture and cause problems, especially to the liver and the heart. Okay, besides this, the normal cycle is that the worm will mature in the small intestine, and then they will start producing gametocytes. You know gametocytes, they start producing eggs. When they start producing eggs, they will move to the large intestine. Okay, after they move to the large intestine, along with the feces, they will be given out again. So it is like a vicious cycle which will go on repeating again unless you stop that by having a proper sanitation house where everything is completely sealed off, and then having a very good personal hygiene where you always wash your hands before touching any food or before eating any food or any fruits or plants. Okay. So what are the preventive measures? That is hygienic deposits of waste, that is your feces. Remember that, by building proper toilets with proper drainage. Remember that. Proper cleaning of hands and cleaning and keeping food covered. You can cover your food with that. There's a net type which you can cover the food. These are all the preventive measures. So what is the treatment? The treatment is a medicine called albendazole. This is very common. These days, there's a thing going on where the government, they provide this medicine to all the kids in every school, the government policy, where this medicine is given to the kids every 6 months, okay? That's the reason why you will see kids getting this medicine at school every 6 months. Why? Because these worms, they are highly destructive to kids. Why? Because it eats up all the nutrients, so the growth will be stunted. That's the reason why there is this introduction of albendazole in the school. Okay. The next disease that we're going to talk about is filariasis. Remember that. Filariasis is basically caused by a worm. that worm is called Wucheria bancrofti, Wucheria bancrofti. That is the pathogen that causes filariasis. This is also like a worm, but the other name of filariasis is elephantiasis. You have heard of that case, right? Where you see a human having such big legs, like those of an elephant. That's the reason why this disease was called as elephantiasis. What are the symptoms? The symptoms are enlargement of lymph nodes and vessels. Lymph nodes and vessels is also another circulatory system besides the system or the circulatory system of RBC and the WBC. They are also called the lymphatic system, where there is a totally different circulation. Remember that. So what is the life cycle? In this case, the life cycle, we're going to focus on this infected man. Okay, suppose this infected man who has filariasis has the worm. Okay, so during this worm is very tricky. It will stay inside your lymph nodes and your lymph vessels. Remember that. But during the night time, the worm will slowly go towards your skin. Okay, the capillaries, and then it will wait for the mosquito to bite. When the mosquito comes during the night time, the microfilary moves to superficial vessels, the capillaries, at night. So what will happen is that the mosquitoes will bite an infected man. After it bites the infected man, it will take up blood with microfilary. Why is it called microfilary? Because it is a smaller, tinier version of this worm. Remember that. This mosquito comes under, they may be of two types, okay? They may be of Culex mosquito or Aedes mosquito. You know that malaria is caused by Anopheles mosquito, right? So they may be of Culex or Aedes mosquito, in which this mosquito will take up the worm, the small, micro means small, the small worm. After it takes up the small worm, after it sucks up the small worm along with the blood, what will happen is that the worm will go to the stomach of the mosquito. That means after it reaches there, what will happen is that they will shed sheaths and then migrate to the gut. What will happen is that they will shed their outer cover. Okay, these are sheaths. So what will happen is that they will remove this outer cover inside the stomach of the mosquito. After it removes the cover, it will form a larvae. This is the larvae. Remember that. These larvae will then go back to the head and proboscis of mosquito. That means the mouth part of mosquito, the pointed mouth part of the mosquito. Why? Because it wants to go and infect a normal person. That's the reason why they go to the proboscis of mosquito. What will happen is that mosquito will now go near the healthy man. And the mosquito bites a healthy man and deposits the microfilary. Remember that. That is the larvae. Remember that. After it deposits, it will start showing all the symptoms. Okay, so these symptoms are shown when, let's say, a mosquito bites the hands of a human being. So what will happen is that obviously there will be ruptures, right? So in these ruptures, the worms microfilary will be deposited, and the worms themselves will go and travel to the lymph nodes. What are lymph nodes? Whenever you touch this part, sometimes you'll feel a node, okay? Those are all parts of the lymphatic system where you'll find the lymph nodes. So what will happen is that when it reaches all the lymph nodes, when there are lots of these microfilary present, then you will start having fever. When the lymphatic nodes and the lymphatic vessels are blocked, what will happen is that the lymph node starts becoming bigger and bigger, especially on the lower part of the body. So when the lymph nodes and the lymphatic vessels starts getting enlarged, then it will start getting bigger and bigger. That's the reason why the lower part becomes so big that it looks like an elephant's feet. That's the reason why it is called elephantiasis. Remember that. So what is the treatment? This treatment is basically they talk about DEC. Okay, this is a very important one. DEC, this is a medicine that is, the full form is diethyl carbamazine citrate. Carbamazine citrate. diethylcarbamazine, carbamazine citrate, C-I-T-R-A-T. This is also a medicine that can be used in filariasis. Besides this, there are some doctors that recommend albendazole with another components of medicines, okay, which will help in filariasis. So how do you prevent filariasis? You prevent by the same way as you did with, I told you about malaria, right? You try to kill the mosquitoes, you try to make the place more hygienic, you try to stop the larvae from developing. These are the prevention methods, okay? The next one is, we're going to talk about the most important thing is AIDS. Everyone keep on talking about AIDS. So what is the full form of AIDS? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Remember that. So AIDS is just a syndrome altogether that is caused by someone. Who is that? It's a particular virus. What is it called? That is HIV. Remember that. Always remember that. What causes AIDS? It is caused by a virus called HIV. What is the full form of HIV? Human immunovirus. Remember that. So the HIV is also called a retrovirus. Okay, this is called a retrovirus. Viruses are basically very difficult to control and very difficult because they take their own time, they take their own they are very difficult, in short. They take their own time, their life cycle is totally different, it cannot be controlled, okay. This HIV is a retrovirus in which the most important thing is that the genetic component, that is the genetic information is carried by the RNA instead of the DNA. Remember that. DNA means this is the genetic information that is found in all human being and living organism, right? What is RNA? RNA is basically ribonucleic acid. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. Remember that, okay? So this RNA is the genetic information. So when you look at the retrovirus, that is the HIV, when you look inside, they found out that there was lots of a post-like structure. These post-like structure were called receptors. Remember that, okay? They are the ones who hook on to the cells. Remember that. Besides this, they had got a lipid layer and 2 protein coats. They had a very specific characteristic. They had the 2 protein coats. Inside the 2 protein coats, there was 2 single-stranded RNA. Remember that. A DNA is always double-stranded, right? It's like a ribbon. But in case of RNA, in this case, it is single-stranded, only 1 strand, remember that. So there was 2 single-stranded RNA. Besides this, there was an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. Always remember, whenever it ends with ASE, that means it is an enzyme most of the time, remember that. So reverse transcriptase. So why is there enzyme present here? We'll talk about it later, okay? So the reverse transcriptase enzyme is there. Besides this, there is an envelope and there is the receptor that recognizes T helper cells. Why do you talk about T helper cells? Because in case of HIV, they are going to directly go and target your T helper cells. What is the main function of T helper cells? Your body is basically composed of T cells and B cells, right? In case of your immune system. So T helper cells are those cells which will go and tell the B cells, start releasing antibody, okay? Like you have an antigen coming inside your body. What is an antigen? That is a foreign substance entering your body, right? So when a foreign substance enters your body starts fighting by releasing soldiers. What are the soldiers called? The soldiers are called antibody. So what happens is that the T helper cells are those which will help the B cells to release the soldiers, that is the antibody. So when it affects the T helper cells, that obviously your immune system will be compromised, right? So that's the reason, one of the main reasons why your immune system is compromised when you get HIV. So in this case, what is the mode of transmission? The mode of transmission everyone knows, by sexual contact, by using sharing of needles, by by the transfusion of blood which is not tested, and also sometimes when a mother gives birth, sometimes the baby will be infected with HIV. Remember that these are the modes of transmission. So then what is the mode of action of HIV? That means what does it do? HIV, what happens when it goes inside your body? When it goes inside your body, the first thing is that it will attack a particular cell. It will go to a particular cell that is called a macrophage. Remember that. This macrophage is also part of the white blood cells, okay. Their main function is to eat up foreign particles, to engulf it, okay, and then kill them. But what will happen is that this HIV will go directly and attack the macrophage, the cell. So this HIV will go to the normal cell. When it goes to the normal cell, it will release the outer layer. After it releases the outer layer, it will go inside. Only the viral RNA will go inside. Only the viral RNA will be introduced. That means only the genetic component will be introduced in the cell of a normal human being. Remember that. After it is introduced, what will happen is that the enzyme will start working. You talk about reverse transcriptase, right? So this reverse transcriptase will change the RNA into DNA. Remember that. Why? Because a living organism, every cell, in case of human also, the genetic component is DNA, right? That's the reason why they're changing it into DNA. That is the main function of this enzyme called reverse transcriptase. Now the virus is composed of the DNA. Now the viral DNA will go to the nucleus of the macrophage, okay. Then it will incorporate itself along with the chromosomes. Remember that the genetic component of a normal cell. After it incorporates itself, it will start forcing, okay. It will start forcing the nucleus, the genetic component chromosomes, start releasing the viral RNA. They will start forcing them. So what will happen is that new viral RNA is produced by infected cells, where the infected cells will be forced to keep on producing this viral RNA, that is the retrovirus. That's the reason why there will be lots of huge manufacture of this retrovirus. Okay, remember that. They will be produced in huge quantity, and then new viruses are produced. They will be replicated, okay. They will keep on replicating, and some of the replicated virus will come out and then go directly to the T helper cells. When they go directly to the T helper cells, they will go inside the T cells, and what they will do is that they will undergo the same process of replication, and then they will force them to reproduce and then attack the helper T cells. When the helper T cells are attacked, what will happen? The helper T cells are the one which helps the B cells, right? So when the helper T cells, when the helper T cells are all destroyed, then what will happen is that B cells will not be encouraged, will not be given information to produce the antibody, okay. When it is unable to produce the antibody, what will happen to a human being? Even as small, like in case of a small flu or a small cold, or even let's say that person has STD, sexually transmitted disease, it will get more and more complicated. Or let's say the person has developed TB, because it becomes highly susceptible. Their immune system gets compromised. Remember that. So all the disease starts appearing, sexually transmitted disease, let's say, or let's say that person gets TB, it gets complicated. Let's say the person gets flu, then it gets complicated and develops into pneumonia. So there are different types of diseases comes and gets accumulated in that person who is infected with HIV. So these diseases are called opportunistic diseases, where it takes the opportunity of the antibody being not there. Remember that. This is how they will go and infect that person, and that person will have different type of diseases, and this will lead to opportunistic diseases. That is all combined together called AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. That means what? Immuno means their immune system. There is a deficiency. So the syndromes will come out. The syndromes in the form of what? In the form of opportunistic diseases. Remember that, okay? So what are the symptoms? Basically, you know, they are very tired, they are very lethargic, but in some cases, it's very amazing. Like in some cases, a person will show the characteristics of AIDS by the first year itself. But in some person, it is highly amazing that they show after like 10, 20 years or so, they don't show. So that's the reason why the government is encouraging us to do test every time. Why? Because some people are the case called they don't show the symptoms called asymptomatic. That's the reason why they tell us to take tests, the blood test. Remember that. So what is the treatment? There is no particular treatment for this, okay? But you can prolong your life. That's the only thing. The disease will be there with you forever. So how do you prolong your life? There is a therapy called antiretroviral therapy, where different types of medicines they combine together in order to control to a certain extent the virus, so that you will live a long life. Okay. This HIV, these days, the government has given out so many instructions, the government has given us so many awareness, so most of you must be familiar with this AIDS. Now, next one we're going to talk about is another important one called cancer. Cancer is a very important one. How do you define cancer? Cancer can be defined as the uncontrolled growth of cells. Remember that, okay? When every cell grows at a specific rate, cells grow and die. They have a definite lifespan, right? So they grow and die, and then they maintain their shape. Remember that. And then they check on each other. Every cell check on each other so that they exhibit cell inhibition. That means they do not grow beyond the particular size, the needed size. But in case of cancer, these cells are uncontrolled growth. They do not have proper shape. They are grown in large number. That's the reason why it leads to the formation of uncontrolled growth of cells. That is called the tumor. Remember that, okay? So what is the difference between normal and cancer cell? The difference is that normal cell will have cell inhibition. They will be inhibited. They will check each other, and then they will grow only up to a certain size, and then they will die. But in case of cancer, they will not check. They will be, in case of cell, let's say they have got a proper structure like this. Normal cell will have structure like this. But in case of cancerous cell, what will happen is that the cell division will go haywire. They will not have proper structure. Some will be very big like this. Some will be very small. Some will take the shape like this. So this collection of uncontrolled growth of cells with irregular cell sizes and all will lead to the formation of a lump-like, a growth, round growth-like structure. That is called the tumor. Remember that. Okay, so what are the symptoms? Symptoms may include, in case there will be a bulge in case of breast cancer. In case of other cases, like let's say in case of your digestive system, then when you give out your stool, there will be presence of blood. When it comes to colon cancer, when it comes to cervical cancer, then there will be blood also. So there are many symptoms, okay, which shows that you have cancer. Besides this, the most prominent feature is that your this one, black mold, will start becoming lighter. These are one of the main symptoms. So besides that, what are the types of tumor? When you talk about tumor, there are basically of two types. One is benign. Okay, benign is a safe type of tumor in which after it grows to a certain stage, it remains localized. What do you mean by localized? That means it stays in its particular place only, in its particular locality only. After it stays in its particular locality, it will form a covering by the connective tissues. You have studied what are tissues in class 11. What are connective tissues? You know that also. Those which connects. So the connective tissue will form a layer in that in that tumor, and then it will not allow it to go to other areas or other parts of the body. That is, it remains localized. So this is not cancerous. Okay. The next one is the malignant one. The malignant one is the most dangerous one. In this case, what will happen is that the cells will grow at an uncontrolled rate. After the cells, they grow at an uncontrolled rate. After it starts growing, let's say in case of, I'm taking an example of lung cancer, okay? When it grows at an uncontrolled rate, what will happen is that after it grows at an uncontrolled rate, the cell will move towards the blood vessels and the lymph vessels, okay? When it goes towards the blood vessels and the lymph vessels, obviously, you know, all the circulatory system is connected, right? So what will happen is that they will go to another foreign places or to the other organs. That is called metastasis. Okay, so it will lead to the most dangerous characteristics called metastasis, where different organs also get the cancer. Okay, so since our time is limited, so I'll take the rest of the topic for cancer, like types, causes, gene causing cancer, and then the test and the treatment the next class. So see you next class.